Welcome to the ISO Show, dispelling myths and sharing tips for success to improve your business with ISO standards, with your host, Mel Blackmore.
Hi and welcome to the ISO Show. In the last episode, we talked about routes to ESOS compliance. That's the Energy Saving Opportunity Scheme, which is a mandatory requirement for organisations in Europe to comply with that legislation. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking about one of those routes to compliance, which is ISO 50001. In the last episode, I talked about energy audits and that being one of the routes, but in this episode we're going to be talking about ISO 50001, the energy management standard. Because if you've got that in place for your organisation, then you don't need to carry out the energy audits, as I explained in the previous podcast. So what is ISO 50001? Well, ISO 50001 is the energy management standard. It's a global standard, and it's held in high regard as being the best practice framework in order to help to manage an organisation's energy performance and to optimise energy efficiency and therefore reducing their energy consumption and also carbon footprint. So it's a really important standard. It has been around for some time now. But you might be thinking, why have a standard for energy management, especially if you've already got a standard like ISO 14001, which is the environmental management standard? Well, energy management is particularly relevant for organisations who want to measure their impact and put measures in place to reduce their environmental footprint, specifically in relation to energy management. So organisations that have implemented this in the past with us have included data centres, hospitals, large manufacturing sites. So generally speaking, it's an organisation where they're consuming a lot of energy and it's a huge cost to the organisation. And it's an even bigger cost now because of the increase in energy prices. So yes, it does cover off many aspects of ISO 14001, but ultimately it's enabling you to look through a very focused lens, looking specifically at your business operations and how you're managing your energy performance. Now, the good news is that if you've already got ISO 14001 in place, you're already halfway there, because a lot of the common elements of Annex SL are in there. Okay, so you don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. It's going to be an enhancement to your existing ISO 14001 management system. But if you're looking to claim ESOS compliance, you just need to ensure that the certification is valid for the compliance date. So it definitely needs to be compliant by the end of this year, which is December 2023. So for those of you who are looking at implementing an energy management system and achieving certification to an energy management standard such as ISO 50001, the time is to act now. The reason for that is that it would typically take about 6 months to implement an ISO standard right through to getting certified. So we're recording this at the end of March, but I believe it's going to be going out in April. So that basically means you need to get your skates on if you're looking at 50001 as a route to ESOS compliance, which is one of the reasons why we're recording this now and not in the summer, because it would be too late by then. So if you do want to get in touch with us about implementing ISO 50001, then please do just add a comment and drop us a line on the link in the ISO show notes, and we'll be in touch with you. And we can basically put together a plan to get everything in place so that you're certified in Q4 this year. One word of warning, however, is that a lot of organisations are starting to look at this more seriously now. I know that ESOS only comes around every 4 years, but we've seen an increase in demand for 50,001 over the last year, more so than any other previous 4-year cycles, actually. Now, the knock-on effect of that will be that the certification bodies could potentially be in overcapacity when it comes to your assessments. So another kind of bit of advice at this stage is to get in touch with certification bodies to see if they're able to offer services to this in the time frame that you would like. Again, that's another service that we offer free of charge here at Blackmores. We're in contact with the top 10 UCAS accredited certification bodies here in the UK, but there isn't anything to stop you from doing that in the country where you're located as well. Okay, so getting back to 50,001 and just explaining a little bit more about it. So the standard is based on the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. So for those of you that are familiar with other ISOs, you know that this is all about continual improvement. And this is why it goes way above and beyond just doing an ESOS energy audit. Because this is a system for continuously improving your energy management performance. So you will find obviously some of the typical requirements of an ISO, such as having an energy policy and having controls in place like management review, internal audits, etc. But I'd say the main difference really between this standard and ISO 14001 is that you need to carry out an energy review. And the energy review is the catalyst to implementing ISO 50001. And I will be recording another episode to talk about how you can implement ISO 50001 using our 7 steps to success, which is ISOlogy. So the energy review is fundamentally important because it's all about understanding how you're using energy as an organisation. So in effect, it is similar to doing an ESOS energy audit, but it's a lot more inclusive in that we're looking at all different types of aspects of the organisation's operations, and we're using that as a platform to then look at implementing controls and recommendations for improvement. So out of that energy review, you will then be able to deduce your energy performance indicators. So this gives you a really clear roadmap on what you need to be doing and how you're going to get there. And that's where the energy controls come in. So that's where you'll have procedures to help you to maintain energy performance. So that could be controlling certain equipment, whether that's CHP or LED light replacement policy, some common sense approaches. It could be, having a cycle to work or car share schemes, things like that, where there are lots of different ways that as a business you can reduce, mileage and use of heating, electricity, and all those sorts of things within an organisation. Because at the end of the day, it will come down to having robust processes in place in order to be able to move the needle in terms of moving it in the direction that you want to be heading. And again, that's one of the benefits of having an energy management system in place rather than just doing a few audits every now and again, or what some companies do is every 4 years. So you know who you are. Following on from that, once you've implemented those controls, there is also a requirement on the monitoring and measurement, and this is where you can report back to the board on performance and you can really see the progress that you're making. And of course, as with other ISOs, there is a requirement for handling non-conformities and dealing with corrective action. So we know that no business is perfect and no business can afford to stand still. It is all about improving what you do. Okay, so that's another key element of an energy management system that's compliant to 50001. So ultimately, building an energy management system is going to help you to better understand energy consumption across your organisation and provide the mechanism to be able to monitor and measure the use of energy. And obviously, like the other ISO standards, it is based on continual improvement. So in terms of the key clauses within the standard, The standard did undergo a revision in 2018, which basically meant that it was aligned with Annex SL, similarly to other standards, as I mentioned earlier. So just to run through the 10 clauses, clauses 1, 2 and 3 are explanatory clauses. So you're not necessarily implementing those, you can't be assessed against those 3 clauses. So the real work begins in clause 4, which is context of the organisation. And then we've got 5, leadership, 6, planning, 7, support, 8, operations, 9, performance evaluation, and 10, improvement. So for those of you that have already got ISO standards in place, you'll recognise the recipe for success with implementing an ISO standard there. If you'd like to find out more information about ISO 50001, don't forget we've got the ISOlogy Hub. So along with the show notes that go alongside this podcast, we've got some content on ISO 50001 and energy management within the ISOlogy Hub. So that's at www.isologyhub.com. So in the next episode, I'm going to be talking about some of the drivers behind this standard and also some of the key benefits that can be derived from it. So for now, thanks very much for listening, and I look forward to catching up with you on the next episode of the ISO show.
Looking to use ISO standards to drive better business practice? Contact us at blackmoresuk.com to access further information and book your free 15-minute call.